All right, we are here. It has happened. Mock draft season officially on the Jackson Kruger Sports Channel has started. So get excited as we're starting off. I've technically already made a mock draft, the consensus big board mock draft, but this is my own. This is going to be the what I would do mock draft. Simply, if I had all of the picks, if I had all the power, what would I do in this scenario? So let's just get into it. Let's start off with, of course, the first overall pick. The first overall pick, the Carolina Panthers, I would have, well, I got to start the draft first. I would have them selecting CJ Stroud. I would. To me, CJ Stroud is my favorite player in this draft. I think that he is plays quarterback, most valuable position. He's my favorite quarterback. If you want to hear more thoughts on why I have Stroud over Bryce Young, who I'm selecting at number 2, you can check out my podcast where I got into a little bit more detail about it. But Young and Stroud to me are clearly 1 and 2. I think it'd be insane if those two aren't selected with picks 1 and 2. You could flip the order. I wouldn't think that's crazy, but because I do have them very close. But either way, I get it. Number 3 on the board now. This is where things get interesting. This is where the draft starts, so to speak. I would go with Jalen Carter, number 3, to the Cardinals. Again, I don't pay a ton of attention to team needs, especially when you get this early on in the draft where teams aren't very good. I think just get a good player. It's kind of how I view it. But at the same time, I do understand, I understand why teams do it that way. And I think Jalen Carter is a good fit for that team. So I think it works out perfectly both ways. Number 4, the Colts. Got to get a quarterback. Anthony Richardson is not number 4 on my board necessarily, but he is top 10 on my board. And I think that he is so valuable to that, to potentially, if it works out. Getting a star quarterback is so valuable. It's worth the risk, in my opinion, for a team that needs a quarterback. The Seahawks here, all right, ready to mix things up a little bit. I know people are going to think this is an insane reach. Give me Kalijah Kancey. I like him a lot. I think his stats are incredible. Like the way that he wins, you have a chance to get an Aaron Donald-esque prospect. I mean, the Aaron Donald comparisons are weird. We talked about them in the podcast, but like he went to the same school, is the same height and weight, like, and then the way that he wins, he's not quite the run defender as Donald, but the pass rushing from the inside, if you can get an elite interior pass rusher, in my opinion, that's worth a top 5 pick. So I'll take a risk there. And why not continue down the controversial takes? People are going to turn off this mock draft and say it's the worst ever. But listen, it's what I would do. It's the players I like. Give me Quentin Johnson, 6th overall. Listen, he's clearly the best wide receiver in this class, in my opinion. Other people disagree. That's fine. Wide receivers are hard to evaluate. But for me, he's clearly the best wide receiver in this class. That's worth a 6th overall pick. And I think getting someone who can kind of fill that DJ Chark role, but potentially do a better job of it for the Lions could be a great option to get an elite receiving talent there. So there you go. Quentin Johnson next on my list. Then I'm going Devin Witherspoon for the Raiders. Could go Will Levis. I'm not a huge Will Levis fan though. So for me, getting a great corner is totally worth a top 10 pick. I think he has potential to be great. We then have the Falcons, and the Falcons are definitely an interesting team because, listen, I think their offensive line's all right. You could go offensive line here, but it's not like that's a situation you need to go after, which is just why I find them to be interesting. The next guy on my board is Peter Skoronski. Do they need to go with that? I think I'm going to go with this. There's a couple guys I have higher on my board, but I think I am going to go Will Anderson Jr. here, who I still have as a top 10 player, and this feels about right. Again, I don't love the draft for need too much, but in this scenario, it's not just that they don't need a tackle, it's that they have 2 really good tackles. So why not make sure that I can just get a good talent somewhere else? And the other, to me, that this just feels right. We then have the Chicago Bears. I am going to go Peter Skoronski. Really like him a lot. My favorite offensive lineman and my first offensive lineman off the board. So now we have the Eagles. And to me, this is going to be another one, which is a bit of a reach for some people, but I don't think so. Brian Branch at number 10 to Philadelphia. Now, they could use someone who could fill that CJ Gardner-Johnson role. Now that he's gone, I think Branch could easily step in and do it, and maybe has potential to do it even better because I think Branch could be. I really like him a lot as a prospect. I really do. So yeah, I have him there. Moving on to the Titans, who their needs are offensive line and wide receiver, but I don't know if I love an offensive lineman here necessarily. So I'm going to go with just the top player on my board right now. I am going to go Christian Gonzalez. Again, biggest need, I would say yes, because you always need corners. You always need corners. Always should try to be, punishing that corner market. A guy who has potential to be an elite corner, get another player in that position. That's what I like. So yeah, I'm getting him there. Number 12 to the we have the Houston Texans at this point. You know what? I thought about it, and I think I'm going to do something that's a bit against what I typically go with and typically recommend. I'm going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba here at number 12. Because keep in mind, they have Bryce Young. So they want to help out their young quarterback. And I'm willing to kind of say, listen, spending some assets to get a receiver for him makes some sense. Still like Jackson Smith and Jigba a lot as a player. I had a little bit lower on my board, not by a ton. But the other kind of players that I like that are like offensive linemen, part of me feels like you're in such a deep rebuild right now. Try to take swings at the premium positions. And for me, wide receiver absolutely is that. So that's why I'm going with that. We then have the New York Jets, who, obviously it's going to be a big part of this is going to be to help out Aaron Rodgers. I think I'm going to get Paris Johnson Jr. to hopefully help out with that, help out the offensive line. We didn't have the Patriots. I didn't realize PFF ranked quarterback as a need for the Patriots. Wild behavior by the PFF guys to say that. Their other needs are listed at tackle and as edge. But again, do I like one of those players at that spot? Not necessarily. I don't know if I love going there. I think here's an idea. Here's what I'm going to go with. That's a bit of an off-board idea. But again, this is what I would do. You have Bill Belichick. Why not get Emmanuel Forbes here? Someone with elite traits who now you have an elite defensive coach who can coach him up and potentially get him to be, in a elite corner. I think that there's some real possibility there. So going with that for the Patriots. Number 15, we had the Packers, who seems like their needs are a lot. You look at their needs, they have plenty. I think for me, I'm going to go with, they could use a tight end. They could use just weapons in general. I know their fans are going to want a receiver, but Kincaid should be able to help them out in the receiving department a lot. And I don't love drafting a receiver at this spot. So again, not fully going with need. He is someone who is high up on my list, but I'm willing to say, okay, there's a couple people higher on my board, but I think need-wise, I'll make a little bit of an adjustment there. Is kind of how I view it. We then have Washington. Washington, it's going to be another, a bit of a surprise for some people. Give me Osiris Torrance, a guy who many do not have in the first round. I think he's a first-round talent. I'm going to pick him at 16 to the Washington football team. And, if you disagree, I get it. You would be with most people, but I like him a lot as a player. I think he's really good. So next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 17, who, again, trying to look at this right now, this feels pretty easy to me. Deonte Banks is my next player who's on my big board. He is currently, a position of need as well. Feels like a match made in heaven there. Get Deonte Banks. Number 18 is now the Lions, who again, their next position, the next guy I have on my big board is Nolan Smith. He is someone who I think they could use. I know they don't need an edge rusher. They don't. But like, people kind of forget, you don't just play two edge rushers. You play multiple edge rushers. And Nolan Smith, if you draft him, is going to get probably 500 to 700 snaps. That's still value there. So I'm going to draft him at 18. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there's players who I like, and this isn't someone who I have incredibly high on my big board, even though he's fourth on the PFF big board. I am going to go Will Levis here to Tampa Bay, to my favorite team. It'd be ironic if this happened. It'd be, kind of like when they drafted Kyle Trask, who is a player I really didn't like, and they drafted him. Listen, quarterbacks are weird. I'm not going to be so egotistical and say that because I don't like him as a quarterback, he's not going to work out, because quarterbacks are so difficult to evaluate. And the reality is there's only one position they could draft that I think could really change this franchise in a meaningful way. if they don't get the quarterback situation, they're just going to struggle until they figure it out. So taking a chance now, you still have Baker Mayfield. So now you have two options that could work out and see how it goes. It's only pick 19. If he falls this far, which he won't, but if he were to fall this far, I'd have no issue with it. But don't trade up for it. I wouldn't love it if they did that, which they might. Number 20 now, the Seattle Seahawks, who have multiple first round picks. The first time they spent one on Kalijah Cansey, which everyone in the comments made fun of me for, I'm sure, once that happened. Because again, I just listen. We all do this. If you evaluate these prospects, we're all gonna have weird draft boards. So this is my weird draft board. Number 20. I think kind of going back to my cornerback thing. Sure, corner isn't their biggest need. I like Cam Smith a lot as a player. He's next on my big board. It's not their biggest need. It's not. But at the same time, why not make sure that that position is locked up? Because it is so fluky, and year in and year out, it can struggle so much. So, Cam Smith, to me, I don't have an issue there. So now we skip the Dolphins since they lost their first round pick, move on to the Chargers. The Chargers, I'd love to get like a Jackson Smith and Jigba if he falls this far, which I don't think he will. Typically, receivers end up getting overdrafted as opposed to underdrafted, at least these past few years. I'm going to go receiver, though. I'm going to go Zay Flowers, who I think is exactly what they need. I've been kind of pounding the table a while for saying this team needs a third option. I think Zay Flowers fits that team perfectly. This would be a great selection if they can get it, which I don't know if they can get it. But if they can, would be a great selection. We didn't have the Ravens here. Ravens next up on the list, who, again, an interesting team. Part of me is thinking about tight end here just because I do love Michael Mayer a lot, but I think I'm going to hold off there because obviously they have Andrews, but they have depth at tight end as well. I don't think they need another tight end, even though I would like that fit. It just, again, don't love drafting for need, but when you already have a cornerstone piece in that position, then I'm a little bit willing to move off of something due to needs. So listen, I don't love any of their needs at this spot for me personally. So I'm just going to go with Brian Bresee, Brise. The name's hard. It is. I'm sorry. But listen, is it their biggest position of need? No. Could they use him? Absolutely. So picking him at number 22. Number 23, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings are a team that, again, you look at their needs, they have a decent amount here, but I don't love any of the players with those needs. So I think what I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to go Tyree Wilson. Take a chance. Why not? Again, I don't love Tyree Wilson as a prospect. A lot of people are picking him top 10. I have him falling to 23 here for me personally, but the athleticism still is insane. It is, and it's worth taking a chance on at a certain point, in my opinion. But the efficiency just isn't really there for me. The pass rush win rate, the PFF grades, those kind of things that do translate well to the next level are not very good right now. And you're kind of having to teach him the position. He's very raw, but if you can teach him the position, you could have maybe the best edge rusher in this class. His ceiling is sky high, so it's worth a late first rounder, in my opinion. The Jaguars are next up on this list. They, made the divisional round. Can they take the next step here? The highest player on my board is still Michael Mayer. So I guess let's do that. Why not? Get the highest player available. They do have, I'm blanking on his name now, the guy from the Giants. But they're in a situation where it's not like they need a tight end, but having a tight end on a 1-year deal is, to me, not a big enough reason to not draft the guy, especially if you like him a lot. So that's kind of how I view it. Okay, next up for the Giants, I'm going to draft a player that their fans might not love me drafting here. Broderick Jones out of Georgia is someone who I'm going to draft, which, listen, why are you drafting a tackle, right? They have Evan Neal. They have, Andrew Thomas. They're good on tackles. But Evan Neal wasn't good last year. We don't know. Maybe he'll get better year 2. That's what happened with Andrew Thomas. And, for me, I thought that Evan Neal would be a bit of a project. That's kind of how I predicted it. So I'm not stunned that he had a bit of a tough year. I'm not. But just the way that I view this situation is if you can get the best player available, you get the best player available and make it work. Evan Neal could play on the inside, or maybe Broderick Jones plays on the inside. You can find ways to make it work with these 3 players. And if Evan Neal works out, great. You're in a good situation. But you don't want to not draft someone just because you have a guy who could be good at that position later, especially when you're a team that, in my opinion, has a lot of holes, and I do think that there is a bit of a drop off in my board after Broderick Jones. That's another aspect. There's another player I like just as much, or maybe a little bit less, who played wide receiver. Okay, fine, but to me, there isn't that guy. If there is on your board, then cool. But I'm doing what I would do, not what you would do. Moving on, we have the Dallas Cowboys, who I'm going to go with, Jack Campbell, who, let's see where he is on the board. I got to find him. But Jack Campbell, a guy who I like a lot as a player. I think that he's a bit underrated. 45th on the PFF big board. I think he's better than that. I really do. I like Jack Campbell as a player. How much better? I don't know. I have him as a fringe first rounder. He is actually the last guy I have. Never mind. There's two more players I have as a first rounder, but he's one of the last guys I have as a first rounder. But still, he's someone who, I think could really come in and be a solid linebacker day one, and it's a position to need. So again, perfect scenario here. The Bills are weird. The Bills have kind of consistently been this team that can sort of do whatever they want. They don't need a lot. Everything is solid, but there's places they could upgrade. Defensive back is the only need listed currently for the Buffalo Bills. So that's interesting. And you know what? I'll draft a guy who I have concerns about, Joey Porter Jr. A lot of people are picking him, top 15. I have him falling all the way here to 27. I'm just a bit lower on him than others. Again, I've talked about this in detail, but I feel like his play style paired with his speed's fine, but given his play style where he likes to play from behind receivers, I think he's going to have a tough learning curve in the NFL, which he could figure it out in a good situation in Buffalo. It could help, and I think they would know how to use him. So this is where I would feel comfortable drafting him. He's going to get drafted before then, but again, in my mock draft, this is where we're at. Number 28, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals here, which, again, in an interesting spot. Several ways they could go. I think the guy who I am going to have them draft is someone who I hit the wrong thing, who I really like a lot as a player. I am going to go with Mazi Smith, who out of Michigan. I think is kind of this, run stopper. That's what he is. Put him on the inside. He'll help stop the run. Simple enough. Like him a lot as a player. So the only guy I have a first round grade on that's still on the board is Hendon Hooker, who I have a late first round grade on. And neither of these three teams are going to go after a quarterback here. Because again, quarterback, the other position, I'm okay with not going for need. So we're in players who I have a second round grade on. But I'll go someone who I have a very high second round grade on. Jordan Addison, going to the New Orleans Saints. Again, it's not listed as a need, but are you trying to tell me they couldn't use another receiver if they could get one? Of course they could. Jordan Addison makes the cut here. We didn't have for the Eagles. It's again another situation where I don't love the fit necessarily, but I think I am going to go with edge rusher if I can find him. Again, my board's very different than the PFF board. I'm gonna go Myles Murphy here, who's actually ranked higher on the PFF big board. He's a developmental guy. He's someone who I could see working out. His athleticism is insane. For his size, he should not be able to move the way that he does. The question, of course, is just how consistent will he be able to, I guess not how consistent, how well will it translate to the NFL is the question. I have no idea. And finally, the Kansas City Chiefs, who, listen, they could use a tackle here. They could use a right tackle. So I'm going to go with my favorite tackle, who is still on the board at this point. I am going to go with Dawand Jones. Dawand Jones, who is not, the highest one still on the board, but he's the one who I draft here. Again, tackle I really like a lot and think could be successful, could be a good right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is what I would do. That is not what you would do. I'm sure that you all think it's stupid because that's just how mock drafts go, especially when it's me and I tend to think a little bit differently than the consensus. So as most people do. So yeah, those are that's my picks. You can see on the screen. That's what you can laugh at me and call me an idiot for, or, hopefully, most of you say, hey, it's not what I would do, but it's still interesting. And I understand your reasoning for it. And if you want to hear more in-depth discussion on why I feel the way I feel about a lot of these prospects, check out the podcast. If you go on the YouTube page and go to live, they were all live. So check out those, and I go into more detail about all these prospects, and plenty of them I have film studies out about. So check those out. But yeah, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.